Hello everybody, and this is the Technical Critique with 89 Technical, your technical critic. Now, my first one of these, I actually wanted to do a rant on the people who played Pikmin 3, but that will have to wait for another month. But what I'm coming to you today with is my critique of and my thoughts on the first episode of the second season of The Legend of Korra. Now, first of all, shh, don't tell TP. She thinks I'm not watching this. As a matter of fact, right now she thinks that I'm writing an absolutely horrid story about Suki's sadomasochist torture at the hands of Azula after her capture before the Boiling Rock. So that's the thing, which is also happening. But shh, don't tell TP. That's the main point. And I'm going to give you my reaction and my response and my critiques to The Legend of Korra Part 2. Now, if you've watched any of my stuff on The Legend of Korra for Season 1, and I have one rant out there, and I mention it countless times in all of our TP Reads episodes, because we've only been reading Avatar fanfiction for the last few times, you know my response is negative. Because I do not like The Legend of Korra. As a matter of fact, there was a great article posted by, give me a second, let me find it. It was posted I was reading it over dinner. It was actually pretty good. Here we go. The article was posted on Kotaku.com. It's called 5 Ways the Legend of Korra Went Wrong. It's written by Kirk Hamilton. And he basically hits nail on the head. I suggest you go read it. He goes over all the things that were terrible with The Legend of Korra. He gets most of them. And I strongly recommend that you go read that if you want to find out what my personal feelings are on The Legend of Korra. Or you could just watch any of my other videos, and you'll probably be able to piece them together. So, Season 2. Now, here's the thing. I went into Season 2 prejudice because I had heard a review of the first episode as seen by somebody who had been at Comic-Con, who had given all the spoilers out in a list. And when I heard it, I said to myself, "Oh, good Lord, this is just going to be this is just going to be another Season 1. Everything sounds very rushed. It sounds like they're trying to cram storylines and narratives, as many as possible into there. And it sounds like they're just repeating all their same mistakes." Now, if you watch my reaction video, you see that the majority of them are not good. To be quite frank, I like the comedy. I think this time we have a better comic relief with Boomy, the brother of Tenzin, and we have a little bit of the same with the older sister as well. Kyra, I think her name is. Yes, I think her name is Kyra. Don't quote me on that. And that works. I laughed. I genuinely thought that was funny. But then again, you have the storylines with Bolin and Mako, and we're seeing the same two-dimensional characters that we saw in Season 1. Bolin is dumb but inquisitive and sweet, whereas Mako, or however you pronounce his name, he is the hot guy who is dating Korra, who is destined to date Korra. That seems to be his role. But to be fair, they do seem to be having something like a real relationship. They argue, they talk about things that happen, and they try to work things out between themselves. And it seems that it seems like with many relationships, it doesn't matter what he says. Uh, he doesn't he doesn't say the right thing at the right moment, and that will set his girlfriend off. But at the same time, it's not like, oh, this is the end of the world. They still hang out with each other, and they're still together. Now, for the opening of this, they basically skip 6 months into the future. I'm gonna spoil a lot of things in my review. They skip 6 months into the future, and they use the opening credit as exposition central, and that's okay, I guess. Uh, I I do think that some of the things that happened could possibly have gotten their own episodes. For example, the disbanding of the council and the election of a president for a public city. I feel that that could have gone in a way, both as a transitional episode, so that we can develop our characters a little bit more, and we can show kind of a transfer of, okay, all of these things finished up, these storylines are being put to rest. uh, the split between the equalists and the benders is being resolved through this compromise. We're going to dissolve a council of all benders, and instead the people will elect whoever that they feel is best to run the city. That could have made a good transition episode. And they mention that Korra and Mako, their relationship is apparently very big in the city. Again, that was a storyline that you could have worked into an episode, and it would have worked as a nice transitional. And what you could have done is you could have shown that things in the South are starting to get unbalanced because the people there are not paying attention to the spirits. Now, I did like the opening scene where they have the spirit attacking the boat. You have a little bit of that humor where the old guy is ribbing the new one, where it's like, oh, you better be careful. But then you actually have to be careful, and things happen. There seem to be a lot of extraneous scenes in this episode. Um, for example, I know they're trying to catch everybody up where everyone is, but did we really need to see Bolin fail at being a fire ferret? I felt that was unnecessary. And also, did we really? I thought that the opening action scene with Mako on the motorcycle, chasing down the bad guy as a cop. Well, that tells us that he's a cop now, and it's a nice way to insert a good action scene. I thought that was well done. The one-liner at the end, absolutely cheesy. But also, where did they get that much water inside of one vehicle? This is logic. Logic is not being applied. But then again, this is Avatar, so you can't expect too much logic. And let's see. Then you've got Korra. You've got Korra in this race that if you haven't seen it in some of the previews, I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I say this. Korra's in a race, and she uses her avatar powers to beat everybody else to beat all the other airbenders in the race. And they go, no fair, you use the avatar state. And then in comes Tenzin, big stick in the mud. No, you're not supposed to use the avatar state like this. It's supposed to be more spiritual. We're basically setting up that Korra is not being very spiritual through an argument. And that's the quickest way to cut through it. But I feel that it could have been handled so much better. They're doing a lot of things quickly. They're doing a lot of things so that they can quickly cut through to all the main story arcs. One, Korra is not spiritual enough. There's trouble in the South between two brothers, between the North and the Southern Water Tribe. That's something that they just spring on you. That, hey, by the way, the North and the South, they don't like each other. Why? Because one brother is the head of the South Pole, one brother is the head of the North Pole, and something clearly went down in their past that we're going to find out about later that causes them to absolutely dislike each other. And as soon as and as soon as you can just spot, you can smell the conflict coming a mile away. As soon as they start talking to each other, and then they launch into, and then they basically launch into religiousness and traditions. And I thought, again, I thought it was rushed, but but this time, and what they're presenting is good, but again, it's rushed because you have two people trying to present two sides to an argument. One side saying that you're not sticking with the basic traditions that keep everything balanced and in line. And the other side saying, well, even though we have traditions, as time goes on and as people change, the traditions are going to change to match the people. And that's a very subtle and deep topic for a show like this to be exploring. And again, all they do is they just yell, is that they have these two brothers yell these 2 points at each other. Whereas instead, you could have explored them in a much subtler, in a much more intricate fashion, and that would have rammed the point home a little farther, and would have given you a lot of time to develop the characters in what I would say is a more European fashion. But again, that's just me. We get a bunch of new characters. We get the other children of Katara and Aang, Tenzin's brother and sister, Bumi, and his older sister, Kyra. I think there's a lot. For those of you who are fans of fan fiction and Zutara stuff, there's a rumor that Kyra is actually Zuko's kid with Katara. If it turns out to be true, I will be so happy. Please make that a thing. Let's not get into that. And let's see, who else do we have? We have Korra's uncle, who's going to teach her to be more spiritual. We have this entrepreneur that Asami is basically trying to make a bunch of business deals with, and he is just completely out there. He is he's every eccentric stereotype just rolled into one, and it is absolutely hilarious. Like he's a big egotist, but he's a very straight shooter. He's excited about everything, but he's constantly seeing new ideas and jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing. And he really couldn't care less about the details. As long as the idea moves in there, he's like a hybrid nerd. He's like a hybrid nerd geek, and I think he's going to make a very good comic relief for a lot of the more serious scenes between Asami and Bolin. Because in this episode, again, we're setting up that Bolin and Asami are going to get together, apparently, because Asami takes him on as her assistant, and they go on board. Bolin manages to convince this guy to talk to Asami. Asami has a staring contest with him, and they manage to work out some kind of deal that they're going to hammer out later. But his character really I think his character is purely going to be comic relief. Like, absolutely, like the way that the Cabbage Man was in Avatar. I think he's going to be our Cabbage Man. Let's see what... Oh, there's the twins. Korra's uncle Korra has two cousins. They're twins, a guy and a girl. They look identical, though. They are like the twins from The Shining, except if they were to be absolutely rational. They are creepy and super rational. Bolin goes up to them and she it's like if you were to take Azula's rationalism and just concentrate it into two people. This is what you would get. Cause like basically he goes up to them and the girl's like, and the guy's like, I think he's trying to make a connection to you based on your geographical whereabouts. And she's like, this could be interesting. You are mine. He's like, girlfriend or boyfriend or slave? She goes, yes, and she just grabs him like, okay, this is interesting. And at the end, we get at the end of the show. Again, I'm skipping back into things, but at the end of the show, as we progress through, we then get to the end where a spirit finally appears, and you have Korra, who is basically used to solving everything. She's still that very brash personality, despite everything that we were shown in the first season, where she seemed to have grown a little bit spiritually. She's still one of those very brazen, bash your head against the wall until it breaks characters, and we see her basically fighting the spirit. And I think this is a point that we should note. Korra always seems to use firebending, which I think is strange because it's very strange. It's very telling of her nature because she's a waterbender of the Southern Water Tribe, first and foremost. I believe in this cycle. It's air, water, earth, fire, as it was in the old. So she would be a water person. So you would think her natural inclination would be for water, but no, she's a very fiery personality. So she has a natural tendency towards fire, and it just emphasizes that brashness of hers. So we see her power up into the Avatar state, and she's basically trying to overpower this spirit. But that's not. But as you know, if you've watched the Avatar series, you know that that's not how you deal with spirits. And her uncle manages to do this weird kind of bend. It looks like he's light bending, because I don't think that those ribbons that were going around the spirit were water. I think it was shadow and then light, and then the spirit. I guess he calms the spirit, and it goes off, and that's when Korra basically sees, okay, I've been trying to learn spirituality from Tenzin, but he didn't know what to do when the spirit attacked. He tried to talk to the spirit physically, and the spirit rejected him. Whereas her uncle, he was able to communicate with the spirit through his bending ability, and in that way was able to send it off. He even says, I've been studying the ways of. I didn't think this needed to be said, but he said, I've been studying the ways of the spirit for many years, so I have this knowledge that's been lost in the Southern Water Tribe. And you see this pull between the two of them, between Tenzin, who is her old teacher, and her uncle, who is the new teacher, and it's this transition where she's like, listen, I'm the student, I have to choose. I think as the Avatar, I need to choose what's good for me. And I think that's good, but again, I think they're rushing it a little bit. If they could have made that decision just a little bit longer, like if we saw some kind of debate previously between Tenzin and her uncle as to the nature of spirituality, and we saw what both of them know, and then you have the situation with the spirit, and then you have them both have to deal with it, and then you have, okay, yes, he is the superior teacher, and that he is then basically bowing to Korra's will, because Korra has seen that he is better for her, whereas instead it's just, okay, he banishes the spirit, okay, this is the guy I'm going to stick with. So I think that could have been done better. But all in all, and don't tell TP this, I'm interested. I want to see what happens next. I would relate very, very closely to the first episode of the first season of the original Avatar. It seemed very kiddish, and everything seemed very juxtaposed. But at the end, you're feeling, you know what? I want to see what happens next. That's where I am right now with it, and that's how I think I'm going to proceed with it. I'm going to proceed with it like, okay, let's see what happens next. Maybe they do a better job because they brought in the writers from the original Avatar. Hopefully they do. I want them to do very, very well with this series because it's an extension of the Avatar series, and it's a chance to get all sorts of new fans into this very great story. I mean, this is a story for the ages. I mean, I would put Avatar as a story right up there with with other epics like Gilgamesh or Lord of the Rings or any of those other great mythologies that are out there. So that's been my review of The Legend of Korra Season 2 Episode 1, and I'll see you next time for the technical critique. Bye guys.